That's all right. We will
4:34.
convene the meeting at 4:34. Here comes Glenn, right on time. That's all right, we're just getting started. First item on the agenda is to amend if necessary and then accept the agenda. Does anyone have any additions or changes to make to the agenda? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Thank you, Barbara. And Ruth, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Next
Who
item,
seconded? I'm sorry.
it was Ruth. Next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes of our meeting last week, April 27th. Are there any changes needed to those minutes?
I just want to point out, there was one little typo,
Yeah, shoe
shoe.
instead of she.
And I also want to clarify that on number 9, the Park and Rec has $200,000 in the capital budget. They have in capital funding, so it's not really the budget, it's available funding that they have, and that is different than the general fund budget. So I just want to add that disclaimer that it's the capital fund. They have
That should
that
be
money.
made clear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So does it need
Yeah,
change in the next minute?
yeah.
yes, just to note that it's, they
Because that
have,
would confuse people.
yeah, that they have $200,000 available in the capital fund currently.
Capital fund, but
Yep.
not the budget.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
That's the 5-year fund.
yep,
Mm.
yep, but it's, those 2 projects have already been fully funded, so they have the money available. If they wanted to spend it tomorrow, they could.
So what happens after 5 years and they don't spend it?
Well, that's a good question. The quick answer is nothing, because the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen don't have a policy in place. It just sits there and waits because it's in a non-lapsing fund.
Hmm.
It should revert back to the general fund after a certain amount of time, but it has not.
Okay, for the purpose of the minutes though,
Yeah.
before we get
Yeah.
into it, nuts and bolts. Any other changes to the minutes? And if not, would somebody please make a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Thanks, Barbara. A second. Thanks, Glenn.
I'm going to abstain because I looked after
Okay,
10 minutes and I missed the majority of the meeting.
all right. Minutes can note that Ruth abstains. All others in favor, raise your hand or say aye. And if any are opposed, and seeing none, that motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public comment, and let the minutes reflect there are no members of the public with us here today. Diving into old business updates, are there any updates on one-to-one interviews, tracking requests for funding, or the publication of survey results?
I received via email 2 additional, I guess, requests for funding. One was from the Boy Scouts, and one was from Kent Affordable Housing inquiring how to apply for funds. I think I did respond to the Boy Scouts, and I told them that there would be an application process forthcoming. I haven't responded to Kent Affordable Housing yet.
Yeah, I think we all saw that one.
Yeah, so it may have come into me first and then I
Yeah.
forwarded it to the committee.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that our meeting today will help to answer some of those questions. So why don't we move on to the business of the day, which is discussion of the information gathered and recommendations. And I think that what we had decided that we were going to try to do today is figure out what our recommendations would be with respect to the process of administering the allocations in those classes 1, 2, and 3, individuals, businesses, and nonprofits. I think there may have been some discussion that we wanted to do with the nonprofit requests, and so, you know, we can take some time to do that as well. And then we should move on during this meeting to talk about the report outline and how we're going to present next week to the Board of Selectmen.
I have a question, not about the first 3 issues. Something I was thinking about, the sewer commission getting $110,000. Barbara, none of that money is gonna go for extending the sewer lines up to that proposed North Kent development or any other development, right?
No, they have a capital project that needs happening and it has something to do with some big huge tank. And it's $1 million project. There's engineering that has to happen and we've very preliminary discussions of going out to USDA for funding and or possibly bonding the balance of the project, but it has nothing to do with extending sewer lines. They've got way more immediate needs.
Could we, in our recommendations, say something like ARPA funds should not be used to expand sewer lines to commercial? Because I know Club Getaway wants to expand there. I know this place does.
I think what the recommendation could be that the $100,000 is being granted to the sewer commission for utilization for their aeration tank project. That's the $1 million project.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay,
just
that
a
would
big,
work.
huge,
Yeah, I mean, that's specific enough.
yeah.
I mean, they will have huge
Yeah.
costs no matter what.
Yep,
I mean, that's only a tenth of it, though.
that's right. They're gonna have to go out. I was talking to the chairman the other day about it, about the different processes for funding that program. Because they won't be able to raise it through sewer taxes, that kind of money. Even if they adjust the rates.
Okay, so,
Okay, sorry for the,
nope, helpful. Do we, so I have a question about the nonprofit grants and the hybrid process that we wanted to devise. And as you can see, I started to do a report that summarizes our recommendations. And I started to, so with nonprofit organizations, we've discussed how some of them are writing to us about their lost income and increased expenses. And some of them are writing to us about what they want to do, like Greenwood's, the increased provision of mental health services, for example. And so my question is, do we want to, similarly to individuals and businesses, put a cap on nonprofits? If so, do we want that to be a cap for expenses and lost income? Do we want to have a second, allocation where nonprofits could do a program? How do we want to handle that? And as I was writing up this draft and talking about our vision that that applicants would put an estimate of loss and disclosure of their other aid received, what does that do to the hybrid nonprofits who have already told us that they'd like a grant for lost income and expenses? How are we going to, obtain that documentation from them if we ask them to cut, if we invite them to cut the line and not do an application, are we still going to require that substantiation?
Yes, and the way I handled it in Cornwall was I just went back to those people and said, this is the process that we've agreed upon. We need X, Y, Z from you to make sure that you have all the same documentation in place that everybody else has. Wasn't a problem at all.
Okay, so that question is easy then, right? I mean, I'm assuming that seems to be the fair thing.
Yep.
That we wouldn't make them apply again since they've already written to us with their ideas and their request. But we would ask them to provide the same substantiating documentation that businesses and individuals are providing.
Probably what I'll do, because I'm thinking about this on the other side for the reporting that I have to do, is I'll take whatever application is the final decided upon application, and I will attach it to these documents that have already been submitted and check off what's missing and what
Fill it out.
isn't.
Okay.
And I'll just put see attached, and I'll circle whatever and get back to the people who have to submit additional information, because it really does have to be equitable.
Okay, so that part's easy. Cap, no cap.
Personally, I think we should cap it all, yeah. But not not to the level of detail that you suggested earlier. I personally, I think a $20,000 cap is sufficient for nonprofits, and with a $200,000 allocation, that limits how many grants that we give right then and there, and I just think that's fair. I don't think everybody's gonna go to the max and ask for $20,000.
Probably not, given the asks that we already have.
Mhm.
Could we talk more about the applications? Because I had some questions.
We're
about
definitely
the-
going to talk about that, Joe,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like we might be close to, let's talk about this cap first, because we are going to spend, some decent time on the applications.
Because I had some basic questions about the applications.
So how do you feel about a $20,000 cap for nonprofits?
I don't know yet, because it kind of remains to be seen how, how many people are gonna apply, if there's like a landslide of people applying. It would depend how many people apply for it. A lot of people apply for it, and there's a $20,000 cap. It's gonna limit the amount that, that could apply, the funding. So, I don't know.
What about others?
Seems fair to me, I guess. I do agree with the cap. I mean, we can't just be out there
Mhm.
without.
Would you go lower?
No,
Mm,
I mean, Chamber of Commerce, the people who are above that cap, I mean, the requests above
Mhm.
that cap
Mhm.
are the HYSB, Housatonic Youth Services, Chamber of Commerce, 56,000, that seems unreasonable. Affordable housing is way over. Kent Food Bank, that was probably an arbitrary number.
Mhm. But so was the Kent Affordable Housing. They just contacted us. Prior to this, they didn't. That was a number that I put in there,
Where did the food bank?
And
just from our discussion.
Oh.
And the
okay. I
Housatonic
wouldn't-
Youth Service Bureau might be, and that might be one of those ones where they ask for a combination from several different
Oh, they are.
towns.
They did, I
Okay,
think it's
well.
part of the COG thing.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's no
Also, I
good.
think Chore Services were part of that COG thing, and they're not in here.
No, they're
And I
not.
know we used them to balance the budget, so
Yeah.
we should
A
put them
lot
back
of
in.
those regional organizations are asking from every town in the region.
Yeah, I think they did it as part of
Right.
COG.
I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
they will be.
Chore
They're
did
not
it, though.
expecting-
Chore wasn't through COG.
No, she,
But when I spoke to her, she said she was gonna apply for ARPA, and she probably is waiting to find out what
what
the
the
application process is.
yeah.
And
'cause she
they
was on
were
our call, yeah.
either 5 or 10,000,
I
but it
think it was
wasn't,
10, yeah.
they weren't all of 20,000
Right.
either.
Yeah, they were 10.
Finishing the food bank conversation, I think maybe Ruthie, you might have been about to say that, first of all, Kent Social Services is not a nonprofit organization, and they don't typically pay for the food bank, but
Right,
community fund could,
right.
but it also already has. for
Yeah,
food
I don't
bank.
think the food bank needs a heck of a lot of money because it's coming from other sources
Yeah,
and we're
I
still.
forget how that ended up in there, but it was on somebody's recommendation list, and I pulled it, and that's how it ended up in
Yeah, I
there.
think we could lower. I'm curious about the cemetery.
Okay.
Why we,
Well, Tammy came to me at budget time and asked for an increased appropriation. So I talked to her about why. And the why was during COVID, they had a hard time maintaining the cemeteries because the staffing, I guess people were sick or they were social distancing or whatever, because they hire an outside contracting firm to maintain the cemeteries. So they ended up having to hire additional people from other places, and it cost them more. And now they're just sort of locked into this additional cost structure. And their grant that they've been getting from the town, according to her, and I think it's in the ARPA information, has been the same for the last 10 years or something, $37,000. And costs have gone up, and they just can't maintain it. So I think we took them back down to the same level as their regular funding in the regular budget. hoping that we could give them something through the ARPA. Help alleviate their
Mhm.
financial hardship.
I can't see how, I certainly think 20,000 would be more than adequate as a cap. And if folks felt strongly about it being slightly less, 15,000 might do it too. And that way it would go a little farther.
As Joe said, it's hard to be arbitrary because you know,
Well, I don't think any of the, the businesses that requested money, nobody requested anything that high.
Well, we're talking about
yeah, we're not.
nonprofits only. So businesses, we were
well.
talking about a $10,000 cap. And individuals, we were talking about a $5,000 cap.
Yeah.
And I did look back at Lori's nails and, how she justified her losses, and that was, it was like 13,000 in 3 months only. So $10,000 isn't gonna go very far, but it is something to
No,
compensate
what it
our
will do
businesses.
for her is give her back her savings that she
Yeah,
she's been saving to buy a house.
and Vanessa too. I mean, that's what she said, is she's like, well, I maxed out my credit cards and I used
Yeah.
all my resources and I
Yeah.
borrowed from everyone that I could ever borrow from.
So
And
that's
I
what-
don't have any more.
Yeah, that's basically the case with, she's been saving for years for her home and she used all of it to carry her through.
Yeah, so I just made that point, like, just because, I did go back before our meeting and look into where some of these numbers came from and the requests, and, I don't know, just made me mindful again of.
If I could say this, if we cap it, I mean, just for example, if we cap it at 20,000, and let's say 10 entities here in the nonprofits all over 20,000, that's 10, and we've appropriated 200. If, let's say the average is 10,000, so the average is 10,000, there's 20 entities that would fit into the 200,000. And I'm counting the number of nonprofits, and it's, I think, 14. So if we go lower, I think we'll be able to catch most,
Yeah, well, I mean,
but
I work
Depends
for
on-
a
But I don't think-
nonprofit that has not put in a request, and
Yeah.
I don't know that we would, but I know that there are other organizations that would
Sure.
put in a request to do programs, just because this was available. And maybe we would, suggest that reparations be made first before programs. I don't know, but I'm in favor of it going a little farther, I think.
so, yeah, so if we think many more nonprofits, or some more at least, will apply, I think if we want to
15?
spread the funding, I think it should be 15. It needs to be lower than 20, is what I'm saying.
I just went with 20 because I thought Kent Affordable Housing in the chamber could probably utilize all the 20. And if we cap it at 10, they can't get that.
But do you remember what affordable housing wanted it for? Because it's
Well,
not like
they-
they're gonna they're not gonna buy a building, or, they're not gonna build anything. They're not gonna buy property with.
No, but
that
I know
money.
that right now, they have a big grant that the town had to apply for them so that they could do some much needed upgrades to the facilities. And when I saw Bill Bacharach last week, I said, what's happening with the grant? And he said, oh, we got sidetracked because the environmental found radon. So now they're remediating radon, which they had not planned on. So it would go for something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure that they would find, but I didn't remember seeing a specific request. and-
No, they have not.
Yeah.
The email that they just sent was the first time they've reached out.
Remember that we also have 19,000 that is still unallocated. So we could, if we felt strongly about any of these, being over, we could fund them specially, or we could kick that 19 into nonprofits, or I don't know, however, what we want to do with it.
And this is a hard cap as opposed to what we've allocated for the 6, for example, the residents of the businesses, we might not use 100,000 on each of those. those monies would be pushed down to nonprofit, so this might be more than 200.
It might be.
So there's
Yeah.
that to consider.
What I did is for the nonprofit category, and I think almost everybody else chose, most of the requests, is I went through them all, and if there were more than one request, I chose the lower amount, and I included just about every one of them, maybe not the United Way. I didn't choose that one, or the community fund. But regardless, I used all of them, totaled them all up, and then the number that I came out with was 90,000, or rather, when I added them up, there was a difference of 90,000. So that 90,000 would be for what's available afterwards for the applications. So I used that amount, figuring that, okay, well, that's the the pool that they can, the amount that they can choose from. So with that in mind, a $90,000 amount, would that to relate a cap to that amount? That's the approach I used for that. I don't know, how does that sound?
I'm confused. So,
I didn't understand it either.
so you're saying you have a pool of 90,000?
Well, what I did, Ruth, is I looked at all the requests and chose,
And they come to 110,
totaled them. Yes,
and that would leave 90 in the
Oh,
pot of to go to
Unallocated.
additional
I see.
people that might apply
Alright.
later,
yeah.
right?
I mean, I think that we would hope that not everyone's application would rise to the level of 15, 20, and that would allow that pool of money to go a little farther. But I think that we should suggest a cap rather than just fund, none of these organizations made their request knowing any parameters or any application process. They just kind of gave us feedback. And I
How about
don't
if we
think
don't
it's
say anything?
fair to certain organizations if we fund at the levels here and not every organization had the opportunity to present a case based on what we are now saying the parameters are.
Right, but I just have a question. Did the Kent Singers actually submit something? I never
No.
got it. No, so that was just a.
That's
request.
me. I fell in love with the guy and in the focus group, and he had so many pitiful stories about having to drive to some singers' houses and give them old-fashioned, what do you call those tapes that,
Cassette
like
tape?
cassette tapes to practice with, and it really is a great choral group.
You're a
And they-
softie, I'd hit you up, wow.
Let's give the
So-
entire allocation to Patricia. and just settle
Yes.
this.
So that was my money. I said 3,000, but if they would be happy with probably one or two.
Yeah, I was just
Um,
curious where that came from, and I knew
yeah,
that I
that's
picked it up
just
somewhere, I
out
just
of my
didn't
head.
remember where.
All right, well, let's determine a cap.
Yeah, I'm happy to go down to 15. I'm even happy to go to 10. I just
Yeah.
threw out 20 as my starting point. I'm
10
negotiable.
is a little, well,
I would say 15.
yeah, I'd go
I'm
with
okay
15.
with 15.
Okay.
Joe?
15 is okay with me. It's not,
And
For me, it's not
as we
critical.
say, who knows, they may never
Mhm,
reach that level.
mhm.
Okay.
So we're capping it at 15.
Mhm.
I think you need to vote on.
One thing, another favor of mine, which I'm not, it's now in business, but I'm not sure it belongs there. The blueberry patch. Now, they requested $25,000 for 200 new blueberry bushes. And I had the idea that that could be hooked up with, senior citizens. Marvelwood sends a bus down and picks people up from the senior center, and there's like senior only picking day. You could also do a thing where people in the community pick for the food bank and donate fresh blueberries, quarts and quarts of them to the food bank, lots of things. Anyway, I have owned my house here since 1998, and I didn't know about this blueberry patch until Arpa. I don't think a lot of people do. When I mention it like Arpa to people saying, what do you think about this? Everyone's like, oh my God, what a great idea to have a community blueberry picking patch. So I think it's more nonprofit than business,
Mhm.
and I don't know,
That is the question though, because it's not a nonprofit, which is why it ended up back here in Marblewood School. And, you know, when you get people with great ideas like Vanessa Anderson, who was like, well, I would love to run a program for, you know, young people on self-esteem and, you know, body image and, you know, being, and I have this, you know, it's all ready and I could deliver it like tomorrow, you know, but she's a business. And so I wonder if nonprofits could apply for the money to do that. I mean, like, you know, so in the case of Vanessa, a nonprofit could apply to pay her to do that program, right? For the blueberry bushes, I'm not really sure how to run it through, but.
But Marwood is a nonprofit.
And what that, didn't we say out loud in our meeting that it wasn't?
No,
I
no,
think,
it wasn't.
I think I
nonprofit.
said I didn't know where to put it because I couldn't figure out if it was or wasn't.
I think it should be in the nonprofit category.
But would they,
And it's on Marwood lands,
Right,
but
that's.
there's no business transaction happening. I mean, it's
Right, but
open to the public.
My understanding is the reason why nobody knows it's there is because it's not on the road. You've got to go into Marblewood
Yes, you
and through some,
Back of
You
the,
have to park on the property.
Yeah.
and so it's not
I mean, the newcomers don't know.
easily
Most
accessible.
other people know.
It's
about
not
it.
like people are gonna be driving up and parking on the side of the road and picking a quart of blueberries and going
Sure.
home. It's
it's also true
embedded
that
in the school.
Yeah.
you have to really want the blueberries.
Yeah.
Because it's incredibly natty.
There are
So
bears.
it's not always
Sometimes.
like, you know, it's not like the dream that, you know, although it's actually, it is awesome. I mean, I'm not, I think it's great. But you have to really want your blueberries.
but if Marvelwood allows people to come
They
on
do.
campus and park and get them.
But that's the strange category here, because because the money's not going to Marwood, it's going.
Who is it going to?
It's going to
It
Marblewood.
is.
They're
That's who asked for
supposed
it.
to
Going to
buy
Marblewood.
the bushes.
For
That's
the
who asked
public,
for it.
Use, yeah.
Well,
for public use.
here's what I heard
So-
about the blueberry patch.
Is
Is that they were donated by Henry Kissinger.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
correct.
correct. I heard
They
that
were on
too.
his property.
They were on
and
his
moved.
property,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
correct.
afterwards, they were given to somebody that owned land, I guess, around Marblewood. And when this person sold their land, it was Marblewood got it, and that's where those bushes came from. So I would assume that Marblewood owns them, the land now.
Marwood owns the land. When the blueberries were given to the school, it was Kent Girls School. So Marwood,
Right.
didn't get.
My concern on that, and I don't, do we get into the nitty gritty? I mean, you're gonna have to, there's a lot of work to keeping up blueberries, and it's giving a lot of money to that needs to be.
I think the proposal includes that Kent
Greenhouse?
yeah,
Oh, really?
the Kent
That'll
Greenhouse.
eat up $25,000.
Yeah, right there, yeah.
They could always apply, once the applications come out, they could always
Do you
apply.
have it on,
It's in the Google Drive.
do you have your laptop?
Yeah.
It should be,
Well-
if
we could have them apply under nonprofits and see. I still, I mean,
Oh, they'd be capped at 15 grand.
blueberry
25 was
bushes,
for the purchase of.
suicide
And
prevention.
then greenhouse would maintain them.
It was over 5 years or something, but they don't really have that much.
Well, I
time.
have a question about that,
Yeah,
because
that's-
we had in our
Paying
allocation,
Mhm.
$40,000 for senior center upgrades plus 2 years of programming. How is that? Is that gonna screw you up with respect to when the money needs to be?
I don't think so, because it has to be obligated by 2024, and I think it has to be physically spent by 2026. And that's in the.
So we
It
couldn't
only
do
has to be
5 years of
obligated by
blueberries, though.
2024.
Yeah, but obligated means it has to be like a capital plan. There has to be an absolute plan for it. It can't be a wish list
So you
obligation.
couldn't do 5 years of maintenance anyway.
No, but they weren't gonna get 25 grand anyway. They're only gonna get 15 if we, doesn't matter. And if they stay in that category, they'd only get 10, right? Isn't that what we're thinking? The business category would be 10.
Right.
So,
So.
But the
But
business
it
category,
isn't a lot
the
of
business category is meant to
Small
be
kind of
lost,
business.
lost
Yeah,
revenues
it's a
or
nonprofit.
But in
expenses, so it
effect, we're
doesn't
also
really
getting a
belong
profit,
there.
a profitable business with this. If Kent greenhouses,
that's
Kent greenhouse is involved.
I mean, that's a profit-making
Yeah,
operation.
Wouldn't somebody else donate the money to do this? I mean,
This one's a
it's a
little
good
edgy to me.
idea, but
I mean,
don't-
I love the blueberries, believe me, I've picked them for years, but when you're putting in that a specific business is going to benefit, I don't know.
I don't see the COVID connection quite as easily.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
but it's not the business it's the community that's gonna benefit. Then I don't know that Kent Greenhouse is going to make a profit on the monies that they get paid. It's for the purchase of the 200 and they're doing work. It's for the community.
Yeah.
I think it feels too complicated to start thinking about, oh, well, I mean, a lot of people might pay somebody to do something for them that we're giving money to, and we never know about it.
yes, that's true. I mean, so if it were like the Scouts who wanted to do this planting community service project, and so they've got this plan to rehabilitate the blueberry garden or something like that, then they would apply for $15,000 to do this. And it would be a nonprofit doing a community service. It's just, there's something about it that feels a little bit different, although, I think that if it falls down into the nonprofits, then they could apply for up to $15,000 to do it.
Well, as I said, I mean, they could apply and then ultimately, the selectmen will be the ones, saying yes or no. That's how I look at it.
I put it in nonprofit, move it out of business for sure.
But to give 25 to that and not to give it to Greenwoods for, I mean, everywhere you're hearing mental health services, youth in crisis, I mean, I just feel like we're gonna have.
I think to a degree, I mean, yeah, that stuff is important, but I also think it's important that some of our recommendations bring tangible, touchy-feely, smelly benefit to people in town, all people in town, the community, that some things come out of it that people can say, wow, this is what ARPA got us. It got us, I don't know, the outdoor exercise stations. It got us a blueberry patch that we can go pick blueberries. I don't know, it got us, I think to some, at least for me, what went through my mind when I was making my recommendation was something for everybody in town. if you know what I mean, something that addresses children, something that addresses senior citizens, something that addresses, so that if you aren't someone who's gonna go and apply for money as an individual because you didn't have enough loss or your income is greater than the cap,
We don't have a cap on income. We decided not to do that. No one has to show that that's not part of it. They do
oh, I
have to
didn't- I
show
was
what
not
they might have
here- I did not
received.
hear that discussion.
It's in the rubric.
Well, I put it in there so that people could check off if they were in favor of it or not,
And that was not
right?
what people,
What
I mean,
is,
I thought we weren't gonna expect people to come groveling and begging.
Well,
And that was
the
part of what we
application
wanted
is
to
going to
do.
ask for certain information, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
that's why I wanted to.
But if somebody makes $350,000 a year and has a family of 15, and somebody makes 20,000, no, if somebody makes $100,000 a year, but they're single. And, I just don't know how you can do that. Unless you want to do like a per capita cap or does this person qualify for food stamps? And it just seems
Are we talking?
really, really
I
difficult to
mean,
do
I don't
that.
think there's any people making 350 who have 15 children.
I'm just
I think
throwing it
it's-
out there. But there's a
But then,
difference
I mean,
between
anyone who
somebody
makes
that makes.
350 and is applying for this, I mean, come on, that
Okay.
seems.
Are we?
So like, let's say, but what if you set the cap at $200,000 a year, and that's a family of 5 versus $200,000 a year for a single person? It's totally different.
Are we talking about the
Yeah.
residents now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
we
it-
jumped
it-
Switch gears.
it-
We
it-
switched.
It's right on this form here, on the rubric, it says 100 K, $100,000. I'm assuming that's the limit up to that. If
Well, that
anybody
was
makes
a
more than.
suggestion that Patricia had made, so I put it on there. 20 grants, your income would have to be less than $100,000, and you would have to show the Kent, that you're a primary resident of Kent. But nobody checked off that category, nobody, so.
I mean, for $5,000, I think you're limiting the group of people who will bother to apply. They will be people for whom $5,000 would make a significant difference. Nobody who makes $350,000 a year is gonna bother to apply for that, whether or not
No,
they
I
have
can think
15
of some
children.
people I know that make a lot of money and think, well, if I can get, I did lose X amount on my stock, and if I can get it back for
Oh, yeah.
5,000, they would go through the trouble of applying for $5,000, even if they don't really need it. I know a few people like that.
Well,
Mhm.
hopefully we weed those out.
Anyway, well, maybe we could finish our conversation though about the blueberries. Do we want to just move them into the nonprofit category?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes,
And then they'll automatically be capped at 15.
yes.
So maybe we've kind of segued into the idea of the applications.
Okay, but I really think we should vote on the cap, just so you have it
Okay,
Yep,
official.
and
Why
I
don't
think
we do
we
that?
should also vote on which ones of these we're gonna recommend in that
Right.
hybrid group.
so if we don't recommend them, are we prohibiting them from putting in an application? No, right?
No, we're not, but we had said originally that we were gonna assume that their request was their
We're
application.
gonna fast
so-
track them. Right.
Right, but if we do all of these, well, I guess we'd have to weed out the ones that didn't actually do applications, like the Kent Singers and the Kent.
Yeah, why don't we
Affordable Housing.
go through them really quickly? And I think what we can do is weed rather than voting on the merit of each of these applications, because we kind of said that we were gonna assume that they did have merit. Right?
Okay, so I make a motion that we cap the grants for the nonprofits at $15,000 maximum.
Second,
Any more discussion?
discussion. All in favor, please raise your
Aye.
hand and say aye. Any opposed? Patricia is opposed. Motion carries. let's go through and see if we can figure out
Excuse
which.
me, why are you opposed, Patricia?
Because I think that there's a couple of requests on here that I think deserve more than 15, but, so that's why. And I think there's some that a lot less, and if we did it individually, it probably would be less than, I don't know, it seems too arbitrary, too much for some and too little for a few.
I would say, though, that if, like, let's say that we made a presumption that well, we can use the Kent Singers since they didn't actually, put in anything, but if we presumed that $3,000 was what they would get, and we wrote it in our report that we were recommending that allocation, and actually they came back and said, thanks, so it's very generous, but actually we lost $9,000. That we would let any of these nonprofits reapply if they were, up to $15,000. So there really is nothing arbitrary about that. It's flat across the board. It's very fair.
Well, now, okay, so
But I still vote against it.
it just, most of these people and nonprofits that have applied, most of them are under 15,000 anyhow. But something like the Kent Affordable Housing, now, 50,000 doesn't seem unreasonable to me. So what can they actually do with 15,000?
Well, we just talked about that a little bit. They haven't actually applied. They sent an email just this week asking
Right,
about
I
the
saw that.
application process. So those two numbers for Kent Affordable Housing came from different members of our committee who
Right.
felt that that would be a fair allocation for them. Some of the things that they can do with that, let's just say $50,000, is they can pay for engineering for a new project, or they can pay for the remediation that I was just talking about, which now I can't even remember what the name.
Radon.
Oh, radon reading remediation. So there's smaller projects that they can do with that funding.
Well, I know that, because I've seen, like, for example, the Sharon Arpa committee had a request from the affordable housing, and it had something to do with their rehabilitating some of their facilities
Mhm.
for $50,000, the
Mhm.
heating and whatever else. I don't, but so, for some expense like that, that would be, that'd be useful. Something like $15,000, it's for their needs. That doesn't really sound like an amount that their organization would be able to do much with.
The other thing that we might be able to do, if Kent Affordable Housing is a nonprofit that is distinctive because they're actually managing buildings and their money is going to that kind of, that might place them more in the category of infrastructure. I don't know.
Well, and just getting back to Barbara's question before about not having heard anything from them. Now, I happen to know that, from one of the members on the committee, is that they didn't know in what direction to, if there was an application, if how to go about submitting an application. There just was no, communication as far as like what they should be doing. So I think that could be why there's nothing detailed from
I
them.
would not be surprised if there were up to 30 different, entities or organizations like that just have not communicated with us.
Right, because we haven't put out a clear directive, but we will. Once we get the recommendations in place and our report in place, we will, and they'll all know.
Exactly. And that's what I thought we were going to cover today, is like details on the application.
So do we want to go through and figure out which of these organizations we're going to allow to fast track?
I thought we agreed that all the requests were valid.
I think that there are a few that have specifically requested funding that we should definitely.
So those are Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
Greenwoods.
Of which,
Chamber of Commerce,
Chamber,
Greenwoods.
Greenwoods.
the chamber, really?
They-
Yes.
Why shouldn't the chamber be eligible to apply for lost income the same way that other nonprofit
They
organizations?
should,
They're gonna get
Um,
15.
but. But 56 seems a lot.
They're gonna get 15 because there's
All
a
right,
cap.
well, did we vote on that?
No,
Yes, we did.
We
Sorry.
voted on the cap.
Mhm.
We can take the second Greenwoods off.
right. 6,000.
Leave the 6.
I mean, we could actually do both the 6 and the 8, but when I went back and I read the letter, there weren't those specifications. It was just a lump sum of many different towns. So, so their suggestion was actually, now that I'm remembering this, they wanted each town to allocate 1%. And so the 1% is 8,218. Is under
So we're leaving that
8218.
8218.
to 18 and taking away the 6?
Yes.
Okay.
HVA.
So cross out the 6,000.
Yep.
Yeah, like they just get one grant. Housatonic Youth Service Bureau just gets one. Ken Affordable Housing gets one.
Even though they didn't apply.
Let's leave that aside
Yeah.
and talk about the others.
Maybe actually, since they didn't apply, let's take them off of the list and wait for them to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
application.
Right,
Okay.
that's what I'm
All
saying.
right, on HVA, are we
5,000.
5,000, what they're
Yep,
put in? Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
because they asked for that.
okay.
And actually, I was on a meeting with like a river
Mhm.
meeting yesterday, and Cornwall and Sharon had
Mhm.
already voted to do that.
Okay.
To do what?
To
Give them
do the
money.
5,000.
Cornwall.
So
said
who's
give
the
it to
Tonic
them.
Youth Services?
No,
No,
HVA.
HVA, Housatonic Valley
Ah, yeah.
Association.
Full disclosure, I work for HVA. I'm not gonna argue one way or
Yes, that
another.
money is necessary for HVA. Really necessary.
Kent Art Association,
They didn't apply, did
okay,
they? I
No,
didn't see anything,
you
right?
took these from my recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
they
So,
were just like,
so let's presume that they
That's what I
will
wanna
though,
give
that they
people.
will.
We're not gonna give them now. Okay.
Right. The Kent
Kent
Cemetery,
Cemetery,
they did.
yes.
but Kent Art Association could use some money.
And we expect
Hopefully
that
they
they'll
apply.
apply.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hope. The food
Well, they
bank comes off,
participated in the focus group.
right,
That's why they're in there.
yep. Yeah, this is not like about the merits of, or the deservingness of these organizations. The library,
They asked for the 5,000.
And
4,000, I don't
4,000.
know where that came from.
no? I thought there were two. Anyway, let's put them in there. I'll look back at the materials to see.
Wasn't that 5,000 for the tripod and the
Yeah. and
canopy?
the,
That's what it
But
was.
what's the 4,000?
I don't know. I
That-
never saw anything. for that.
There's something else. There are two letters from the
I
library.
think there was
I'll look
an
back.
original one. There was an early one, and then there was the second one where
I'll
they
look back.
actually detailed out.
So we should take out the 4th,
Take
Yep.
out the 4.
okay,
Um,
and singers.
Take them out.
The seniors program is done. The
Yeah.
singers is off.
I think we should take out the Northwest Connecticut Arts because I think there's going to be enough requests of local organizations right here in Kent.
Okay.
And they
Did
don't
that
have,
come through COG?
yes, and they don't have a presence here in Kent. So,
Northwest Corner Community Fund. I
don't know
I
what
didn't
that
look
is.
back on that.
What is that?
That's the woman who, hold on, I'll tell you in a minute. She came to the social services.
I think they just want us to make a donation so that they can put it into their local
I don't even
funds
know
where they give grants.
the corner community.
The guy
Oh.
who Kent Singer's Kent Westmoreland, by the way.
I think it's supposed to be Northwest Connecticut Community Fund, not corner. I think it's supposed to be Connecticut.
Is that Guy Ravesi's?
I think so.
Oh. Okay.
Hey, Johnson. Julie.
Oh, Schwanberg. Schwan-
Julie Scharnberg,
Mhm.
Northwest Connecticut Community Foundation.
Yeah, okay, that's who that is. Okay.
They have a very small staff compared to the
Yeah.
foundations
I
of their
wouldn't-
side. They had to spend money to upgrade technology for staff to work remotely. They covered the whole Berkshire Taconic territory.
She wasn't at my social group.
Pardon?
She was not on my group.
I say we take the regional things off.
She was
until-
on the.
And they
If we
can
have money
always-
left
yeah.
over later, then that's a different story,
So-
but I think,
Northwest
so who's in
my
Connecticut
group?
Community
Yeah.
Foundation,
All
Northwest
four of
Transit,
those.
and United Way all come off. And
Yeah.
So was the woman,
Yeah.
Debbie Shiflett Fitton from
Okay.
the Kent Art Association.
I will tell you, a full disclosure, I'm on the board of the Northwest Transit, and we do need money.
how did many people do they serve in Kent, do you know?
Twice a week, the bus that goes from here to New Milford. Shopping. And then in good times, once a month, the senior bus trips. So, yeah, they have a presence here in Kent.
Okay. Because I know that, in other northwest corner towns, they utilize the dial-a-ride up at Gear, and they also have, we have Fish here, and they also use Chore. Chore workers drive a lot of people different
Yeah.
places.
But we don't, we're just out of the range of Gear, and
I
we're
see.
just north of New Milford, so we're right. He's here twice a week, Monday, and Wednesdays. so That's an important service.
what do we want to do?
Well, we
Have
can,
them apply? Or, I mean, I can't
They were
remember.
through COG.
That was a group thing.
yeah, that was,
Through
yeah.
COG. I
yeah, we'll
think,
take it out and have them apply.
yeah, I think we can
Northwest
certainly
Transit?
Yeah.
send them an application once we get the
Yeah.
application process up and going.
Okay.
Bit of a
Well,
flux
that was a
there.
comp thing too, wasn't it?
I
Yes.
think so.
Yeah.
So we have
Okay.
Chamber of Commerce, Greenwoods, Houstonic Valley Association, Houstonic Youth Service Bureau, Kent Cemetery, and Kent Memorial Library are our surviving hybrids that we want to say, we're going to presume that
Mhm.
these organizations get funded.
Mhm.
We
Which
don't need to
ones?
vote on that, do we?
Yeah, we
Which
should.
ones are
because
we
we've
gonna
voted on that.
recommend funding?
Yeah, I think everything that we do
Okay.
should have.
Then let's
motions
do.
and-
Yeah, so it's the Chamber of Commerce for 15.
Why don't do this in a form of a motion?
Oh, I make a motion that we approve the following recommendations. $15,000 to the Chamber of Commerce, $8,218 to Greenwoods, $5,000 to HVA, $10,000 to the Houstonic Youth Service Bureau, $7,000 to the Kent Cemetery Association, $5,000 to the Kent Memorial Library.
Barbara,
Second
for the, well,
discussion.
Okay,
for the Chamber of Commerce, you said 56,000?
no, 15,000, because we've
Oh, I
capped
don't
all
think
these at
that's
50.
enough.
I know, but we already voted to cap all of these grants. The maximum any one entity can get is 15,000. So that's the most they can get. Because we've capped it.
So how, so, okay, so, all right, so we're voting on that then.
We're voting on those 5 allocations, 6 allocations.
Because we already did vote on the cap.
Yeah, and you all voted, you voted yes for it, Joe.
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of like the cart before the horse, you know, to go over all these requests that were in there, you know, and then having to eliminate a lot of them. That doesn't really seem
Well, I
right
don't know
to
that
me.
they're eliminated. I think they'll be back.
Well, though, you know, it's,
Hopefully they'll be back with applications.
Yeah, and for the chamber, I mean, it's
Can
a
we have
matter
a-
of getting are getting this money to go further. So that we can serve as many community nonprofits as need.
I mean, if we gave them their whole allocation, that would be a quarter of what we've allocated for that whole group.
Well, we've allocated 200,000.
So that's
Yeah,
a
so
quarter.
If we gave them 56, that would be.
Well, I'm assuming the Chamber of Commerce, the way it operates in most towns is that it's an advocate for the local businesses.
Mhm.
So, you know, so all the businesses are covered by the Chamber of Commerce. They know which businesses are ailing or would meet the more in need of, you know, of assistance. And they're also promoting economic development.
Well,
There's no
that's
such
more,
thing
I
in this
don't know
town.
that they reach out to individual businesses. I think they do
No
more
idea.
promotion.
Just for their members. You have to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce to get services from the Chamber of
Well, from what I
Commerce.
And what
understand,
services do they provide?
Well, so I think the relevant facts for this request is that they are requesting for lost income because they were not able to hold their normal fundraisers during COVID, which we hope that they will going forward be able to.
But they're
But
promotional fundraisers for the most part, right?
no, there are things like the pumpkin run, the
Yeah,
champagne
Right, that's
stroll.
what, but they're promoting businesses here in town. They are not giving money to an individual business.
Oh, yeah, no, they don't do that.
Right, that's
And
what I'm
they-
saying. It's promotion.
The fundraisers go, they directly support the chamber,
Right, right.
right? So it's not like, and they don't, you know, their promotion of businesses in towns is more like social media.
Mhm.
You know, so they will tag businesses in town, and if there are, you know, if there's something like the Gingerbread Fest and somebody hosts a gingerbread, actually, the chamber didn't do that last year. That was
Did they
private.
do the sidewalk sales in August?
I,
that last year, yes, there was a sidewalk sale last
Yeah,
year.
they do. I'm pretty sure it's the chamber, isn't it?
you know,
But
I
it's
guess what I
promotional,
mean
it's
is
not-
like,
Yeah, I mean,
they
I'm
basically,
wondering-
they do these fundraisers to meet their annual operating needs, and the fundraisers that they will do this year will meet their annual operating needs, and they'll only spend what they're able to raise, and
Mhm.
so, you know, 15 or 56, it's just gonna
Here's
be
the thing
like,
about-
They did
the
the
chamber,
champagne stroll
that-
at Christmas time, don't they sponsor that too?
But you know, when we were looking for small business owners to talk to us about how COVID affected them, they were no help at all, which means they didn't help their businesses who suffered to have connections with us that might help them get some funds. So they didn't serve their clientele very well in that case at all, I don't think. And it gave me a sort of bad impression of the chamber as not very particularly useful to
I mean-
the businesses in town.
I don't know that we have to discuss it overly, because we did vote on the cap,
Right? And actually,
so.
I'm
it-
thinking I need to amend my motion because I need to include Marvelwood at
Oh, right. The
15,000.
The blueberry patch, I was just gonna say that,
So I amend my motion
but I
to
like your word
include
better, orchard, the community orchard.
community orchard for 15,000. Somebody, you have to
That
resecond
sounds
me.
nicer.
You have to resecond me.
Resecond.
Orchard,
Sorry.
her orchard. I just,
Okay,
Stephanie,
further
no, I just
discussion,
hope that it works. I just, there's been such, you know, people have started and stopped up there and let it go, and it just fizzled. and-
Well, one of
but
the
that's
other,
not
wait,
here nor
one of
there.
the other requirements that I'm gonna put into my compliance and reporting thing is that there's a 6-month reporting requirement after they receive funds.
Wow.
And then there's gonna be probably a 1-year reporting requirement if it's something like
Like
that,
a
that's
seasonal,
long-term.
yeah.
Because I, on the other side of this coin, have to report to the federal government and give them a status of how these
Okay.
funds are being used and what they've done and the status of the projects. I actually have to put in individual projects.
Wow.
It's a lot.
It's a
So
lot.
anyway,
Yeah.
I think
Good.
there's
Well, okay, so
definitely
there's
gonna be
some
follow-up.
accountability,
Yes.
because in the past, everybody was gung ho. Yeah, it was great. And then it fizzled and nobody took care of them, quite frankly. And
yeah.
that's my concern.
And for things like that, I'm gonna require before and after pictures.
Good.
Only because if we get audited by the federal government, I have to have it.
Glenn, can you look in the ARPA Google folder and get the letter from Marvel with the woman? It was a woman, right?
I couldn't
Yes, it was
find
the,
it, actually.
The headmaster?
yes,
Like,
yes. it's like-
Blythe,
Yeah,
yes, that was
I
her.
was looking for it.
Are we about ready to vote on these?
yeah, let's move on.
Okay.
Can I repeat?
Mhm.
Chamber 15, Greenwoods 8218, Housatonic Valley Association 5, Housatonic Youth Services Bureau 10, Cemetery Association 7, Library 5, the Community Orchard 15.
All in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
I-
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. Thank you.
Motion made by Barbara, who seconded.
I did. Or did
Yeah,
It
I?
was good.
Okay,
I reseconded.
okay.
Okay, so with those amounts, what does it bring the total of the fund for nonprofits?
15, 20.
With Margaret,
30,
it's 65,000.
35, 50,
65.
65,000, give or take.
About 65,000.
65,000.
135 left for others.
So then, okay, so then for applicants, there'll be something like 140,000.
Or more, Joe, because maybe they.
We don't know if it'll roll
But,
down from
yeah.
the other categories.
Can we have like a second category? You know, people took a lot of time to prepare their presentations for the focus groups, both social services and nonprofit. Could we have a second category of like, people we're going to send letters to and say, you know, your presentation at the, or your conversation in the focus group lead us to believe you'd be perfectly qualified for an ARPA grant, please apply.
I think they will apply. I mean, I think it is
But I
up
don't
to,
think Kent, that Westmoreland guy at Kent Singers will, I don't.
I guess what I'm saying, what I'm thinking is,
Do you want to?
I'd like for our committee to be done with its work.
Yeah.
And I'd like for our application to be simple enough to not dissuade any deserving people from applying. And I would like the notification, the public notice that the grant application period is open to be broadly shared so that it reaches everybody, you know, because there, for every Ken, there is another person who wasn't part of your focus group,
Well, I
who is
mean,
just
there's
as
not a
kind and
limitless amount
sweet
of
and deserving.
nonprofits that catch. There is a delimited, there's a limited number of nonprofits in Kent, it's not endless. And,
Well, hopefully
I
then
think-
there'll be plenty of publicity and that could get these people out. but
well,
that-
I guess it doesn't stop one of us personally,
doesn't.
individually.
Not at all. If you
from
want to
writing
undertake it,
That
that's
guy.
just more
Yeah, I
life.
think
There are
it's-
some
have
on
more
there
time.
that,
They can always apply. I mean, then they'll be vetted, you know.
Patricia is saying,
She's
ask them
fearful
to
that they.
apply,
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
solicit applications.
If
Well,
you want to
but-
write somebody a letter to your newfound Ken Singer, go right ahead.
But I've asked people about them. I personally haven't heard them, and I'm ashamed of that. But people tell me they're an excellent choral group.
Yeah, they're very, but really, Patricia, with website and everything else, hopefully people will, I mean, you gotta. People have to take some responsibility. I think you can spoon feed just so much. My,
And the kind of art
Theory.
association,
They'll apply if they want to do something, or if they
it's
had,
out there,
yeah.
they have to take some initiative. Yeah.
so
we
I,
don't have an art association in our group. Or a cultural association in our.
but they'll
pre-approved
apply
group.
if they have something to apply for, they will apply. It's not like, you know, we're not,
I'm thinking of the PR aspects of it, of this.
that is why,
exercise,
right.
And
And that's why I never
Using
wanted to
the
do any of
people
this
of town.
directed, like, I don't think that it potentially sends the right message to actually say, you know, these people are presumptively funded when we haven't had an application process. But I do differ with the rest of the committee on that. I don't think it's, you know, so I would hope that nobody feels left out because they're not on this extremely short list of nonprofits. 6 nonprofits it's nothing. And we need to really be clear that we think that the, you know, the potential pool is much broader and includes all different kinds of organizations that people are not seeing here.
I'm thinking when townspeople go online to read the recommendations and all of that, are they going to think, and I think we have to consider that those people did a lot of work. They put a lot of thought into this, and they have come up with a very fair and balanced and touches everyone on some point or other approach. That's how I would like people to feel when they read our recommendations.
I think what we
So
have
I'm
to,
gonna try to see that we do that.
yeah, I think maybe in our, if we have a preamble to our document, that it would state that's the recommendations we're making are based on the information that we've received to date. However, there is an open application process for all individuals, all businesses, all nonprofits, and it's going to be open from X to X. The application is available here, click, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Will that be helpful?
Something like that can be put on like the town's website,
Absolutely.
you know, and then this way here, you know, it'll get more publicized that way. But I was wondering if we're gonna get into the actual application, because I had questions on that.
Just one follow-up on yours.
Yeah.
My one concern, Patricia, if you reach out and say, please apply, and we decide, or the selectmen decide not to, that might raise some hackles. too.
Yeah, we would have to know in advance
I mean, if you're.
whether
you know,
the
I mean, that's,
selectmen.
you gotta be, that's a little hairy too.
I think it'd be reasonable enough to say that once this is delivered to the selectmen and the selectmen are deliberating and doing whatever piece they're gonna do, once we know what they're gonna do, and hopefully it won't take them but one meeting to figure out what they're gonna do. If I have a list of
Are
everybody,
you serious?
yeah, if I have a list of
I'm
everybody
serious.
Well, you know,
that participated, I could send them thank you letters for participating and include an application and leave it at that.
They're,
I mean, that's easy.
you know, just to that
That's
idea
a,
of the
that's a
selectmen.
nice, I like that.
I mean, the selectmen need to take into consideration that a group of 6, sometimes 7 people have been meeting on a weekly basis for the better part of a year. And, you know, hopefully that kind of input and focus would allow them to trust the process and the recommendations.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
I
why do
will
you?
stress that statement.
Why do you convene a subcommittee and have them meet and meet and meet and meet and meet and then report to you if
I
you're
think
not
that's why
going
Mike
to?
Powell stormed out of the streetscape committee thing.
All right, well,
Moving on.
let's talk about this application.
Okay,
for
so
a bit.
let me just give you a little information. This is the application that was created by the town of East Windsor for their erase grants. It's 2-sided, it's very simple, and I want to use it as a template, only a template for our application, and I want to make it this, you know, one for business and nonprofit and one for individuals. So obviously the one for individuals, it's going to be basically the same information on the very top, date, name, address, primary contact, I'll probably remove the part that says applying as, and then I'll probably, after we have this discussion today, modify this first paragraph about what requirements we're going to ask for. And then the back gives you eligibility and application requirements. So it's simple, it's easy. And well, I'm not reinventing a wheel.
Yeah, that's gotta be easy for you.
Okay, so this one form here
Yeah,
is going to be used for nonprofits, businesses, and individuals?
no, I'm gonna take the one for people and I'm gonna make it just a little bit different. So I'll remove all the wording about if you're a nonprofit or if you're a business, that kind of thing.
Dates of closure,
Right.
good standing, that is not applicable to a person.
Right.
And so would just be removed from that
Right,
application.
I will modify and based on what our discussion is right now, add additional information for the personal applications.
Yeah, because there was a draft that I had that
Yeah,
I
that was
saw.
another one that
for
I
non-
created,
That one's
yes.
not going to be used.
Well, it's another version of the same
That one
idea.
there, yeah. the one
Yeah.
that- Yeah.
I mean, I could certainly take both of these and make them into one kind of an application for the businesses and nonprofits if you feel that there's information on here that's relevant that you'd like to see.
Well, what I was wondering about, since I'm thinking about it, is that, okay, if someone fills this out
Mhm,
and sends it,
mhm,
they're going to be sending it to Treasurer, Town of Kent,
mhm,
okay?
mhm.
So the individual ones are also going to be coming to Treasurer, Town of Kent, or just
Sure, I actually,
ARPA, Town of Kent?
well, there's a new email that's been created just for ARPA, and it's called ARPA at Town of Kent, and that's a regular email, but it's separate from my treasurer email, and it's ARPA at Town of Kent, so it'll house all of those applications, all of that information, and it'll just come to me.
Okay, so then you're going to be administering
Mhm,
everything.
mhm.
Do you
Or,
think the Board of Selectmen are gonna be okay with that idea, or
I think
one
it-
or
I
more of
think
them
it-
are gonna say, I also wanna see the applications and sign off or not?
I think the recommendation has to be that it has to come to one place and be disseminated from there. If they want monthly reports from me, or they want weekly,
I agree
whatever it
with you.
requires,
I'm just
but
like
Well,
knowing what
so
I
the
know.
primary purpose is to move this money out as quickly as possible.
right.
So
Absolutely.
the idea would be that there would be a very narrow time frame for the applications. I wrote in my draft 5 weeks. I don't know why I said 5 weeks, it could be 4 weeks, but I figure it takes everyone a week just to know about it. So
Mhm, mhm.
something was saying 5 weeks.
Mhm.
I'm not set in stone, but something very narrow, time limited. And I think that once the applications are received, money's got to go out the door. And so if there's an
As long as they
added layer
qualify,
that
yeah.
requires like a meeting,
Yeah,
that is just going to slow it down.
And deliberation, and then public comment, and
Yeah, I don't think you can. do
so
that.
I'm good with Barbara and businesses and nonprofits. Individuals, is that something that should be social services? I don't know, but I would guess if you're applying for $5,000 as an individual, you don't want to spread that around too
Why?
much.
I don't think it should be social services, because I think social services has a different activity. They have a different job.
Yeah,
In town hall. They deal with a different set of criteria completely, and to burden that office with absolutely a new employee, having to know what the criteria is for this, it's not fair. The reporting criteria that I have to do on the other side of this coin has everything to do with matching up these grants that we give out to COVID-related things, loss of income, health issues, mental health issues, childcare issues, all of that. So I'm thinking on the personal application, I'll pull from the reporting requirement that I have some checkboxes like this and say, in what ways has COVID affected your household? Check, 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 check,
well,
check.
and can you add some sort of statement about confidentiality? That somehow the people who apply, their application will be treated.
Oh,
and a
absolutely,
confidential-
I will,
Right.
but you know what?
I mean, Sorry, go ahead.
The reporting requirement, I actually have to disclose names and addresses and contact
Oh,
information.
really?
Yeah,
But
Oh,
why
so
should
that
people
might-
be so embarrassed if they had bills?
yeah.
I don't think that that is
I
what
don't
this money is
think so
about.
either,
Like,
but I think
if
people
you
are
suffered a
embarrassed.
loss from COVID, that,
However-
that you care enough about and is important enough to you that you would make an application. There's nothing like, personally, I wouldn't judge anyone that made an application for any of these funds. I just want people to have them. You need it, have it. You need it, have it. You need it.
No,
have
I
it.
understand that, but human nature, people do not ask for help.
That's why these
And
applications can't be
particularly
anonymous.
financial help
Mm.
without some feeling of confidentiality. They don't want the world to know their financial situation.
Well,
Um,
unfortunately, what's gonna happen is, and this is already happening, I'm getting FOI requests from open government, we wanna know kind of people. What are you doing with your ARPA money? Where's it going? Who's getting it? I'm not gonna have a choice. If I give you a check for $5,000, I'm gonna have to say $5,000 check to Patricia
do
XYZ.
you need to tell people that and that?
I
Because I
can.
really do, I mean, there's no judgment involved on my part. I'm just saying, I think people don't want everybody to know.
It's federal
their
money, so
financial
there's not a
situation.
lot, well, that's another piece though, because any financial documents that are provided are confidential. Those aren't open to the public, but these applications are open. to the
Like whether
public.
you received an award would be open to the public.
And, right, and if I'm writing a check to you, that's open to the public.
So
But I think-
their,
Their
if
tax
they submit their
returns,
tax
no,
returns
none
or
of that is
whatever,
open to
none
the
of
public.
that.
No, no.
Well, that's why, like from what I've seen, from with other places and stuff like that, I have not seen too many other places choosing, to give ARPA funds to individuals or residents, that kind of.
They
that
are.
could- Well, the only thing that I have seen is the premium pay, not premium, yeah, premium pay for essential workers.
Didn't Gordon say the other night, we've done our profits and now we're gonna start with individuals. They're going to
Who said that?
Cornwall.
Cornwall.
Oh. Because it hasn't been publicized or
Well,
anything.
they're not gonna name everybody who's getting it, and,
In another
They
thing,
could if you
another
asked,
thing
I
too,
guess.
that I had seen too, is that in a lot of the requests that were sent in, they were sent to you, to
Mhm.
some of them were sent to the first selectman,
Mhm.
some of them were sent to ARPA committee.
Mhm.
So there was like not a consistent, place
Mhm.
where they were sent.
Well, I think our recommendation will be very clear on where the applications are to be sent.
ARPA, town of
And,
Kent,
and as far as the individuals and that, I mean, I think that social services or someone that has, knowledge of social services should be involved with something
Oh,
like
no.
that.
I mean, this is not the same as social services.
Yeah.
This is people who were damaged by COVID.
And Barbara's vetting them. She's
Yeah.
she's
They are
got
not-
the job of vetting. them.
This is not like, I can't pay my heating bill or I need food. It may be that that's what folks end up using that money for, but this is to repair damages that they had that are directly related. to
Well,
COVID.
again, I mean, I don't want to go there again, but I mean, it really has not been demonstrated, so,
And we'll find out.
Right.
We've already been over this
know.
and maybe $100,000 doesn't get used up, or maybe it does. And we don't, and we disagree about what the survey results show about whether or not people actually do have financial need. So we know
So-
this is what we came up with.
So for the applications now, for example, the housing authority, they apply.
Mhm.
And their application goes to Treasurer, Town of Kent.
No,
CT?
ARPA@townofkentct.org.
Okay, so it's still gonna be two different places.
No.
No, it's only
All
gonna go to
applications
ARPA.
will go there.
It's only gonna go to ARPA, and the reason is because I don't wanna have my treasurer email flooded with the same stuff. I wanna keep it separate. So I asked Jean a long time ago to create an additional email for me that's just ARPA. I know you guys use the treasurer email, but. And if I do get something in my treasurer email, I forward it to the ARPA email and delete it out of my treasurer email. I don't deal with it in my treasurer email.
Confusing.
Yeah.
So making progress on this application, does anyone have any thoughts about whether or not an application like this would be adequate? If not, are we ready to
Simple-
get to a
simple
place where
Yeah.
we are? I mean, I don't know that I feel like I need to actually approve an actual application as long as we have one to propose to the Board of Selectmen. And if we can say it would look substantially like this and be simple, not to exceed 2 pages and not to, require boatloads of documentation.
I think a declaration might be too, some of the wording is a little off-putting.
On this
Yeah,
template,
a declaration sounds like so official or something. I think just written an explanation outlining. You can simplify that. And the first statement is how you're going to use the money. The second written statement is what
how you're connecting it
losses
to
you
COVID.
incurred
Right,
during COVID.
Might be
Okay.
able to simplify
So
that
maybe it
language.
should be the
Yeah.
other way around,
yeah,
because you write, switch those 2 bullets in order.
because like I was saying earlier, on the flip side, when I have to report it, every grant I give out, I've got to connect it to something. So
Yeah,
I already did my reporting in Cornwall for the nonprofits that we've already released money to. And 90% of
oh,
them.
you do Cornwall's too?
Yes,
Lucky you.
I'm the finance director in Cornwall too. So anyway, 90% of the grants that were released in Cornwall, economic harm from either business closing or inability to fundraise. That was basically the 2 things that came
Yeah.
up.
For individuals and
No, for
residents.
businesses and nonprofits.
So I make a motion that we approve Town of East Windsor application with minor modifications as our model for applications for businesses and nonprofits.
And individuals. Can
Well,
I?
This
okay.
isn't for.
Well, I'm gonna
individuals.
use the same
I thought
template,
she said she was gonna,
but I'm gonna add some different things to it for the individuals.
So do you want 2 separate motions?
yeah, that's what I was doing, just for, okay.
Okay,
A motion to approve the Town of Windsor application with minor modifications for use by Barbara for Kent's applications for businesses and nonprofits.
second.
All in
Discussion.
favor?
All in favor? Okay, any opposed? None. I'll make the motion that we similarly use this as a template to create an application for individuals to apply for up to $5,000. And, noting that, the modification should be aligned with things that you would ask individuals as opposed to things that you would ask businesses.
My second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, we've got our application.
One thing about the individuals, I don't think the premium pay for frontline workers for IGA, that should be in the individual thing. I don't think those people should have to apply.
No, that's under businesses.
Yeah,
Not under
so,
individuals.
Right, but I don't think Gary Davis should have to, I meant business, should have to apply for that.
Well, that's a weird conundrum because my understanding was the interview process is he said he didn't want any.
Yeah, that's what I thought was
And
that
that the
he might not
26
want to
was
do
something
this
that
because
we
of
came up with.
reporting.
But I thought he said he wanted
No.
it for his workers.
I was the one who interviewed him,
Okay.
and he didn't say he didn't want anything.
Okay,
He said he didn't incur any losses
okay.
because his business actually increased with people
Mhm,
Oh, he did very well.
going there.
Yeah.
mhm, mhm.
But what he did say was his employees deserve something because they worked through COVID.
Mhm.
Many of them risking their health, their family's health, trying to, they had 25 online orders a day. They would have to run around the
Mhm,
store
mhm.
and pack them all up and bring them out to people's cars, and then when they opened under regulation, they had to deal with irate customers, and
Mhm.
they endured that business. And
Mhm.
then because of the supply chain thing, they'd have to come in at 11 o'clock at night to accept deliveries of whatever.
Mhm.
So they really had a hard time. So he
But,
made an argument that they deserve premium pay.
I think,
of
didn't
some
we
sort.
decide that, like, didn't we talk about something about whether or not certain employees would want those things because then they'd have to report them on their taxes? There was like complications that way. I remember having that discussion about whether or not this actually was, much help. And, I guess one comment I would just make
It
also
was a
is
lump
that
sum. It was a lump sum.
it's a staffer's market. And so I do agree that those workers deserve something. I wonder
Well,
why their level of pay
what they
necessarily
would,
stayed the same.
they-
I would say that they, premium pay aside,
well, they would be
they
eligible,
could have had a raise.
they would be
Did they
eligible
get,
for the.
maybe they
I
got
don't
one.
They
know.
might have
Yeah.
gotten a raise,
I
we
don't
don't know that.
He said
I
he
would-
paid overtime, I remember. reading
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
He paid a lot of
I'm
overtime.
what
I'm
is
sure
your-
Gary
the
did.
point.
He's-
What is
The
your
point is,
concern?
does the town want to reward them?
But
The
your
town.
concern is Gary has to do all the work, or they have to do all the work, is that to
Well,
apply? What is your-
Yeah, it's like, why is it going to go through the application process for that? Why can't we, as a committee, recommend that the employees of our IAGA who worked throughout the
Mhm.
shutdown get X?
We can.
Well, they'll be eligible for the ARPA grant, the town of Kent ARPA grant. And that Barbara's gonna be
But
administrator.
you have to account for it, right? You can't just give them.
Okay, so the way premium pay works, if that's the avenue that those employees would be rewarded, is he would actually pay them through his payroll, and it's premium pay up to $13 an hour above their regular pay for a certain number of hours, up to, and it's huge numbers, I think $26,000. So if we allocated $1,000 to 26 workers and we broke that down, I don't know what their rate of pay is over there, but he would be giving them, he would isolate a certain number of hours that would equate to that difference between their rate of pay up to the $13 on top of that to get to the $1,000, and he would give them a check for that, but it would still run through his payroll.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Don't they have a payroll department there? They can do all that stuff,
Do
right?
we want to do the overage?
You mean the taxes?
No, sorry, the, the, whatever it is, 18, 17,
Oh.
19. Do we want to make a recommendation that remainder be used to explore whether it can be a premium pay program for the IGA? And that way, if Gary's interested, the money's
Mhm.
there and we'll
Mhm.
figure it out.
We could do that. I thought there was 26 employees. I don't know where I got that from, but maybe from the $26,000. Yeah, 26 workers.
I think that was like in the focus or one-on-one interviews.
Yeah, it was a one-on-one interview. And I'll never forget it because it was the day of my car accident.
Oh,
Happened right
no.
after that.
Right, and wasn't there, but there was also craziness that happened in the
Yeah,
store.
somebody with a mask.
Yeah, some guy was screaming and yelling
About
and
the
they called the cops on him.
Oh,
It was the day of your what?
My
Car
car
accident.
accident. That was,
I know
Yikes.
about that.
That sounds like a bad day.
So,
it was bad. I was rear-ended by a 5,000-pound dump truck while I was stopped.
Oh,
And the whole
no.
back of my car was smashed in. I had groceries in the car. I had tuna fish dripping from the ceiling. I had a nightmare. And I'm still doing physical therapy and I'm still bruised today,
Oh, no.
5 months later.
that's
Yeah.
crazy,
Wow.
crazy.
It wasn't a hit and run, it was it?
No, the guy stopped and admitted that he was looking at his phone and he didn't see me stopped in front of him in time to stop before hitting me.
Wow.
So support for that idea? Allocating the remainder?
I would leave it up to, you know, what's easier for you. I mean, do you have to account for all those or?
Yeah. Technically, I
I
do.
mean, I'm okay with whatever, but, you know, just has to follow the rules so nobody gets into trouble.
Right. I think I would, before I can actually answer your question, I think I would need to have a discussion with Gary to find out what the easiest way and what his employees are making.
That makes sense.
Well, we do have that 19,000.
Yeah.
And I do think that premium pay is different from the regular business application. And we have talked about in this
Yeah,
committee
it definitely
before,
is.
the idea of being able to do something in that
Mhm.
category of the ARPA
Well,
funding, so.
I know, and I've said it before, and one of the meetings is years ago, working for the post office, we had gotten hazardous pay from that anthrax incident. And it was negotiated through the union. And we received checks for a lump sum amount. No taxes were taken out. That's all I know about it from that. Everybody that was employed and worked during that time.
Well, they may have grossed it up so that you got the lump sum payment and they just had the taxes on the other side. There's all different ways to approach it.
I think it's
So
a good idea
anyway,
if
you're
you
gonna
talk to
talk
Gary.
with Gary Davis about how
Yeah.
to best to do that.
Yeah,
But we may not have that resolved by next week.
no. But that can still be a recommendation that's,
So we could recommend that
We explore that.
where in the business section?
no, it would just be one
No,
of
I
the
think it would be
separate thing.
a separate
Would it-
thing.
Are there any other businesses in town that did the same thing, like the gas station? I mean, if you give it to the IGA employees. I know I did a lot of line ordering with Pipe and Drum, where you could get groceries through them, you could get toilet paper, you could get.
Mhm.
And Elise and her husband and people were packing those stuff, bringing them out to the car. Do they get that too? Did the people at Patco, they were open all throughout COVID? Do
Well,
they
here's
get that?
where they apply. That's all.
They can apply,
That's-
okay.
I would say, I mean,
Mhm.
you just can't go out and hunt down all these people, will be here forever.
Mhm.
So-
Yeah, but if it's a different category, if
Well,
it's.
again, they know, once we start,
Mhm.
publicizing that we
Mhm.
have all these options.
Mhm.
There's nonprofits, there's individuals, there's businesses. Let them apply. I mean, we can only do so much. We'll be here
Within,
forever if we
within
started
the
that.
final rule, there is a little bit of a synopsis, which I was planning on trying to condense down even more, that talks about the criteria for each of these different categories. So the information about premium pay hopefully will be included, if it's not too cumbersome to include it in the recommendation so that people have that information up front.
So like, what you mean is like maybe 2 sentences or something like that?
Probably more like 8
Because
sentences.
it is 26 people, that are being affected.
Well, we're saying we think maybe it might be more, but
It might be more than 2 sentences, but there's specific criteria in order to qualify for premium pay.
It's listed in the guidelines.
Yes, it is. And I'm hoping to boil that down to make it easy enough for people to read it and understand it. So that if the Fife and Drum wants to apply for a grant to give their employees premium pay.
They could
can.
apply.
Yes.
So if people want to apply for premium pay, is it gonna go in the business category?
Yeah, they would apply for a grant, and if they choose to do premium pay
but
with it,
then it might not be capped at 10,000, would it?
why wouldn't it be?
I don't know. Is the IGA, were we talking about the IGA being a little bit more or not? I'm okay with it just being part of the business, because I think I really felt like we talked through this issue and we decided that we did not want to get into premium pay with our recommendations at all. And that we also had a conversation at one point and decided that only the IGA, that the IGA would be our only business that might qualify. So I was already well beyond premium pay
Yeah.
in my mind. I'm okay with it
I
being.
guess I'm
just
gonna
part-
go back to the request that I'm gonna require everybody who gets a grant is gonna have to give me a 6-month report, and if they don't finalize their money in 6 months, another 6 months later, another report. So if they decide to use premium pay when they pick up their grant, I'm gonna say, okay, this is the criteria for premium pay.
I think
So
that's
if you're
fine.
gonna do it, this is how you have to do it, and this is the reporting requirement back to me. Otherwise, you can use that to cover lost revenue or whatever else. you do with it.
Mhm.
I agree with you that we shouldn't be in the business of making those decisions about whether people are giving their employees premium pay.
Okay,
Not up to us.
so can we move on to, now it's late, it's 6:10. I have a hard stop at 6:30 because I have another Zoom
So
at
do I.
7 from my
So-
house.
Me too.
And I haven't showered, I haven't prepared any food for anybody, and I will be busy on that Zoom till 8:30.
So I'm gonna, and I don't think we did this yet, make a motion to cap the business grants at $10,000.
Second. Any discussion?
Is that too much? 10,000? Would 5,000 be better?
I think 10 seems more reasonable.
I think 10 for a business is more reasonable.
Okay.
Shall we vote?
Mm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And seeing none, that motion
And
carries.
then I'm gonna make a recommendation, or make a motion to recommend that the individual grants get capped at $5,000.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Raise your hand or say aye. Or any
With
opposed?
this stipulation about the, oh, I guess, it funnels down if we don't use,
Right, that's gonna be in Connie's recommendations,
okay.
right? That's your part.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so I
Wait,
believe,
just
You have to vote.
Oh, sorry.
all
sorry.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are any opposed?
I just have one question on the individual, a form and
Mhm.
what, it capped at 5,000, you said, right?
Mhm.
Okay, well, how do they qualify for that? What kind of documentation criteria do they have to
Yeah,
provide
that's
to prove that they were harmed?
It's probably going to be tax returns that won't be available to the public.
That their income was less?
Mhm.
What are we gonna make as the income limits, if any? And I was thinking about the primary residence thing, because if you have 2 homes
Mhm.
and you lost money in the market and you're asking for 5 grand, probably we should have that Kent is your primary.
I think
residence.
that's a fair request, that Kent needs to be your primary
Yeah,
residence.
because it's Kent money.
Yeah.
Well, for so many people though, who had, I would hope that anyone that owns 2 homes is not going to be applying for the 5,000. So I guess I'm not really willing to fall on my sword for this, but I also will say that so many people who had another residence moved here during COVID. So during COVID, it was like everyone's primary residence.
Yeah,
But
that's not the
they'll
point of
prove that though with a tax return.
I think it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It is, that's who we intend to benefit with these. This primary residence of Kent.
I don't know that you can put an income level on that. That's.
I don't either.
Not unless you keyed it to some per capita thing.
Yeah.
I think,
Or number of dependents.
I think
or-
the better
That's a
way to
real
look at
scary thing.
the criteria on that would be to say that your income had to have been down 20% or more, or some percentage, so that you could connect it to COVID. No, you're not liking
That's,
that idea.
even that's tricky, you know.
I know,
don't
but if you have a tax return, then you've got the documentation right there, wages and salaries X 1 year, wages and salaries X the next year.
I have a
I think
question.
that's fine. I
And
mean,
then-
if we make this too onerous or too, like, people won't apply, and we want people to apply. I mean, this, we don't want to have it be a
Discourage
self-fulfilling
people.
prophecy that we didn't think that many people were harmed, so we made it really difficult and really demeaning to fill out the application, and we said we were going to broadcast it all over the place, and then no one
The
applied.
other thing about a tax return too is, let's say it's a self-employed person who cleans houses, right? So 2019, they had a full slate of houses they cleaned. They went every week and their gross income was $35,000 on their Schedule C. And so COVID hits and all of a sudden they're not going to anybody's house. They're not cleaning anything. They're looking to clean the church if they can for extra. So their gross income for the calendar year of 2020 is now down to $15,000. And on the front of their tax return, you see that they collected unemployment. I think that's fair. They're qualified for a $5,000 grant, in my opinion.
So what if somebody is not, cleans houses, but they're not, they don't have record, they don't have their tax return. They're paid under the table.
What
And
are we
make
going to do with
That's a
that?
whole-
Yeah.
I wouldn't even go there.
Or here's another hypothetical. Here's
they're
another
pros.
hypothetical situation. Is,
Alright.
okay, you're saying residents of Kent, okay?
Mhm.
What about like, say, and there's student population here in town,
Mhm.
they're not permanent residents, but they've been harmed and they decide to
The
apply.
students?
Would
No,
they-
they're not the
No.
students. They're not eligible.
And to get
for
back
this.
to your original question, if they can't produce a tax return, then we can't give them federal
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
It's true.
it's
It's just
federal
the way
money.
it is. Then that person would be somebody who would be better served by going to social services. There still are avenues for folks who don't pay taxes to the federal government to get some assistance if they need, but that's not what this is for, and we can't do it anyway.
Yeah, this is federal money, so.
So the
It's
only
taxpayer money,
criteria
well,
for
yeah, but it's coming
applying
from-
for a $5,000 grant as an individual is,
Well, I haven't parsed that out yet, but I will when I do the application. That leads me to thinking that what I started this meeting with is we kind of do need to have another meeting so that I can give you these documents and give you the piece of the puzzle that I'm putting together, just so that everybody gets to see it before it all gets put together. And Joe and Glenn weren't privy to the fact that after the last meeting, I had a discussion with Connie, and I suggested that I write up one portion of the report, Connie write up one piece of it, and Patricia write up one piece of it, and between the three of us, we agreed to do that. So we're sort of operating on this little plan that what we're gonna do, so I just wanted to make sure that you two folks were aware.
Well, wait, run that by me again. In other words, you got 3 people on the committee that are providing input and others that are not.
No,
No,
we're writing,
Drafting a report.
we're just writing the report.
Actually,
What we have
Joe,
approved.
Joe, you already wrote your part of the report.
You did,
You are lucky because you did your homework already,
Yes.
because
Right.
the environmental scan is part of the report.
yeah.
So,
And the letter that went to the boards.
and
that
the
wasn't
letter that
mentioned.
went to the boards, and it is mentioned in this draft
That's her
which
piece.
provides the, well, no, this provides the whole outline, and this is what we'll plug things into, right? So, so the report is a title page,
Mhm.
an introduction, an overview of ARPA and compliance that Barbara can do because she speaks that language. Patricia as our secretary, a description of what we did, our methodology and our meetings. And
And I
then,
think it can also include, I hate to say results, but, some of the, trends or, what we learned from the focus groups, the one-on-one interviews, the surveys that informed our
Right, but
recommendations.
that's what I thought. was
if you
gonna
want to
be-
write anything like
Patricia's-
that, that's fine, but that goes in the section that I'm drafting. So
Right.
I would take what you wrote and put
Right.
it into there.
So I'm
But
drafting.
but
an
ideally-
outline Of, we did postcards, we did this, we did that. we did
Yes.
that.
Do you want
and
to
how many
trade?
people were participated and the surveys and how long the
Oh, that's
survey
like
was
nothing.
out. and
It
all
should be
that.
2 paragraphs long. I mean,
Yeah, that's like
ideally, we
nada.
want this report to be 3
How many
pages.
meetings we had.
No, 3 pages?
Well, 3 pages of writing that somebody can scan in 5 minutes, and then all of the appendices. So the appendices are the survey, they are the survey results, they are the focus group notes, they are the one-on-one interview results. They're all our notes, all of the documents that right now are unpublished in our Google Drive. They include the environmental scan. So that section on what we did should just be straight out, this is what we did.
Yeah. this
To
is
a
how
couple
many meetings
paragraphs.
we had, this is
And
how
then the
many-
I'm
results-
not worried about that.
the
I'm worried
results
about
should
the
be,
Results and recommendations being pared down to a page or a page and a half.
I don't want people to have to read through this document to know what we recommend. I just want, I would
Nor will
love.
they.
I want to justify a year's worth of work.
But,
To the-
Patricia, nobody's gonna read through that stuff.
Yeah, we
That's
have
not
to,
true. That's not true. I know a
Oh.
lot of people will read it. A lot of people are interested in what we're doing with the
Right.
ARPA money.
But
A
not
ton
to,
of people.
not to the, where you bog down with all this.
yeah, I mean, we
It
do
doesn't
have to
all
have
depends on
results,
How well you read.
but the
whether
results
it's
should be
a bogged
very
down thing or not.
summary. And the recommendations should be findable in, like, if somebody picks this up and it's 100 pages long, which I would actually
There's a
say,
big difference
No,
between
but-
3 and 100.
but there
She
will
It's
be,
gonna be like-
there will be like 100 pages of appendices. There will be quite a few
What is it?
appendices if we publicize, if we publicize all of our notes. So if somebody picks up something that is 100 pages, they don't want to read it. If somebody picks up something that's 3 pages, they'll give it a read.
I think the recommendations will end up being on 1 page or page
I mean,
and a half.
yeah, because the
Well, it-
recommendations are give this much
I
to this,
think
give
each
this much to
category
this.
should
and
get
give-
at least 1 page.
Oh, I don't agree with that. I'm sorry. I don't think that anyone, I think it makes it
Okay.
too easy for the Board of Selectmen to disregard our recommendations if we have a page that's devoted to each
Are we
recommendation.
saying that this town is people with people who have an attention span that can't read 5 pages? Is that what we're saying? They can't read 5 or 6 pages?
Yep.
Well,
Well, it's not that they can't, it's that will,
I mean,
will they devote
seriously.
that amount of time? I don't know.
well,
If you look right now, the recommendations that are our allocations take 2 pages.
Well, I think more importantly is like with the recommendations, mentioning them, but more importantly than even that is to say something about how we arrived at getting our recommendations. That's the most important thing that I can think of. How did you get that? How did you get those recommendations? And to have that put in there is the most important thing, I would think.
Except that how we got those recommendations was, we looked at all this evidence. And you can look at it too, but here are our conclusions. I
Well,
mean, I
actually,
don't-
no, that's not true. Someone had an idea as to how we should go about it. And it was accepted, and that was to start 6 categories and then putting all the allocations using those 6 categories. That's how we arrived at the result. And anyone disagree with
I'm
that?
just gonna come right out and say I'm unwilling to write that report before next Wednesday. I cannot do it. I don't have the time, and I don't think anyone else on this committee does, or that we will have the time to make recommendations on
I
that.
think we can do that.
I can't,
I mean, why can't you?
because I do not have the time to do that, Joe, because I work 5 jobs. I'm so strung out, having done this every week since last August. I'm so excited to be done with this.
Then I ask for another week or something like that. You don't have to stress yourself out.
That is what I just said.
You can delegate.
I don't think
You
we'll be
can
ready by
delegate. You don't
next.
have to write the whole
Good.
bloody thing.
Let's talk about that, but it's still probably not gonna happen by next Wednesday if we're talking about a much lengthier report.
Well, I don't think we are. I
I
just
don't-
think that we want to make it concise, but something that is going to convince the Board of Selectmen to agree with that.
Yay.
And
Well, who's
advise
gonna
the
write it?
document.
So, wait a minute, let's back up a minute. Patricia's activity set is methods in meetings. So within her activity set, she can talk about the methods that we use to come to the conclusions that we have. Right?
No, but you just said that's in the other section. All you're doing is writing what we did.
Yeah,
That we can do
methods,
in a
what did we
paragraph.
do? We had this many meetings, we
Yeah.
discussed XYZ, we created, based on the information that we had, 6 categories, we allocated X amount of dollars to each category. We assessed the raw requests that we had received.
So that's a half page.
We make, well,
You can make it a half page. You don't have more than that.
right. That's what I'm saying though, but what you're asking for is really gonna be part of what Patricia's writing up, I think.
Well, it should be mentioned that that's how we arrived at our
Yes, I have a
results.
hard stop in 5 minutes.
I was gonna
What are we
say,
gonna do? Who's gonna do it? And what's our next steps?
we have a hard stop in 5 minutes, and looking at next Wednesday, we're hoping to have a special meeting with the board. of
It's already
Selectmen.
been called.
Might have to be canceled in any way. The Maria's convention is on the same day, in the same building, in the big room.
I need to be downstairs at 6 o'clock, and it's a 4:30 meeting up here.
What's downstairs at 6 o'clock?
Maria's Horns
Yeah.
convention.
Oh,
So.
Who knew?
So if we were to do this on Wednesday, I was going to ask if we could start at 4 o'clock or earlier to get it in if we wanted the same day, but it sounds to me like we won't be ready by then.
No.
No,
Okay.
well, I think, I think we
So-
would be, but part of the problem is that I think the committee members need to be able to look at what we're submitting and agree with it before we submit it. I think that's.
I think
Yeah,
that's true.
absolutely.
Yeah, so
So-
again, I go back to, I mean, I could write, I already wrote a lot of what my section that I thought was my section is.
Mhm.
And you are all welcome to look at it, and it's in the Google Drive, and I've printed that out for you today. But if it's gonna be substantially different, then we need to discuss how we're gonna get that written and done, because I'm not gonna be able to do it.
I'm for simple, I'm sorry,
Me too.
I
And
just-
I had every intention of making my section quite simple.
With all due respect, if people don't have attention span, not just here, everywhere. People are not going to sift through pages of voluminous pages of stuff.
It's
Get
not
to the-
voluminous pages. I mean, don't you think it takes a page to explain what you're doing for businesses? Don't
No,
you think it takes a
no,
page?
no, I don't.
We were
I think-
charged with doing a needs assessment and presenting
I mean, I guess,
recommendations, and we expect the Board of Selectmen to abide, to accept our recommendations.
These are our.
So do we need to bend
categories
over
and
backwards?
I think
No.
it's
What
just,
do you think? And what, as a selectman, what would you be looking for?
I've been involved with these meetings, so I know what's here already.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I
so
mean-
our audience is not
I-
just the selectmen, okay?
True.
This is the difference of a marketing PR person and a not market. The audience are the townspeople for this report. I'm telling you, people are hungry for it. They want to see it. They want to know how we came to our recommendations. They want that. I think to cut it down to a 1.5 page thing is disappointing.
Okay.
Our audience is not primarily the Board of Selectmen.
we've got 2 minutes. I
But what are our
will email the
options?
Board of Selectmen, tell them to take the meeting off the calendar, and I'm not gonna recalendar yet until we know that we're closer. Patricia, I would invite you to write that, to draft the report, and then we will all look at it and we'll decide if
Invite me to draft the whole report.
No,
the report on results and recommendations, I'll trade with you. I'll outline what we did. So I will do the methods and meetings, and you can do the results and recommendations, and you can spend time during the results explaining why the results, what the results were and how they informed our recommendations, just like you've been discussing.
Well, I'd rather me do it than no one do it.
Yep. I'd
Yeah.
rather you do it than me do it.
Okay,
So there is the draft already, and I'll add in what we voted on tonight, and then you can just go from there. And I'll do the 2 paragraphs that have your name listed next to them.
okay.
But I do think that we're gonna have to discuss,
Well, maybe,
whether,
I mean, Barbara seems uncomfortable with that.
I'm just trying to process it all as fast as I can. Because I do think that we could probably pull this all together, but we will have to have one more meeting so that everybody has a chance to look at the final
I don't think
document.
we can do it by next Wednesday.
No, I don't think so either.
I guess I'm being a little selfish because I'm a little bit of a tunnel vision and I'm only looking at my piece because I have so many other things I have to do for the town. So I know I can get my piece done, and if the other pieces get switched around or redecided, that's fine.
So why don't you do your piece? We'll calendar a regular meeting for Wednesday. We'll look at what we have and then we'll reassess. But you'll be done with your part.
Yes,
So when the report is presented to the Board of Selectmen, are they going to be voting on it that night?
I don't think we know that, Joe. But we have to conclude. I'm very sorry, but I have a competing meeting that I have to get
No,
home for.
I would say no, because they need to look at it and read it and come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
They're gonna be hearing it at the meeting.
Yeah, but they have to think about it and not
Think
always,
about it,
yeah.
Okay, thank you all for being here. It is 6:31 and we'll adjourn the meeting. I'll see you all next week, 4:30.
But you have 1 second.
Yes.
Um,